Hello everyone, it is me, Miss Yule. In this video, we are going to look at sets of real numbers. So this unit is all about number sets. So the first thing we're going to do is identify different types of numbers. So in this lesson, you will be able to identify sets of numbers. So we have numbers, but we can categorize them with different names. So it's going to be a lot of vocabulary words today. All right, so real numbers. You might be thinking to yourself, aren't all numbers real? They're not. Not all numbers are real numbers, and I'll show you in just a second what that means. Real number. A real number is nearly any number you can think of. So take a second, think of a number. It's probably real. It definitely is. Real numbers can be positive, negative, or zero. So maybe you were thinking your number was negative 1,000. That's a real number. 0 is a real number. And any positive number. So maybe 4/3. That's a real number. Infinity is not a real number. There is a symbol you see sometimes used for infinity. It looks like this, kind of like a sideways 8. And that's the infinity symbol. Infinity is not a real number. It's just goes on forever and ever. Not a real number. Real numbers are not imaginary numbers. So in this lesson or in 8th grade, you will not learn about imaginary numbers, but there is such thing as an imaginary number. So don't worry about that for now. Just know that they're not real. But any other number you can think of is a real number. The first set of numbers we're going to talk about is rational numbers. Now, what does rational mean? A rational number is any number that can be written as a ratio or a fraction. So lots and lots of numbers are rational numbers. So I want you to think of a number right now. It's probably rational if it's a whole number like 2, or if it's a fraction, like 1/2. Those are both rational numbers. Fun fact, the word ratio is contained in the word rational. So ratio is like a fraction, and it's in the word rational. Some examples of rational numbers: 1/2, because it's a fraction. Negative numbers are also rational, so negative 2/3, that's a rational negative fraction. Decimals like 0.25 or 25 hundredths, we can actually write that as a fraction, 25 hundredths. So that is also rational. It's a decimal, but it is rational. And then we have repeating decimals. So this little symbol means that it repeats. It's like 0.33333, and that can be written as 1/3. So it is a rational number. It can be written as a fraction. And then you'll also see, oops, I messed that up. You'll also see things like the square root of 4, and we're going to learn more about that, but this is a rational number because it equals 2. All right, there's also integers. Integers are all positive and negative whole numbers. So some examples of integers, which are also rational: -2. -2 is the same as writing -2/1. So this is rational because I can write it as a fraction. 3, positive whole number. -7, that's a negative whole number. And 15 is a positive whole number. And 0. 0 is also an integer. And then whole numbers are positive counting numbers and 0. So numbers like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Negative numbers do not count as whole numbers, though. So 1, 5, 100, 0. Now we have rational numbers, so any number that can be written as a fraction, and then we have irrational numbers. Irrational numbers are numbers that cannot be written as a fraction. Its decimal value has infinite digits that do not repeat, and we will talk more about irrational numbers. But the main thing to know is that irrational numbers are just not rational. They cannot be written as fractions. So here's a rational number, 3/2. That's rational because I can write it as a ratio or a fraction. And then we have some fun numbers like pi, pi, which is this really long decimal number that actually goes on forever and ever. It's usually just 3.14. It's my favorite number. And you can't write it as a fraction. I can't even think of a fraction for that. So it's irrational, no ratio, no fraction. Fun fact, irrational. So this ear in front of rational means not. So not rational, irrational. Thank you, Izuka. So here's all of our numbers together. We have our real numbers. So irrational numbers are real. They are real. They are valid. They are valid numbers, but they're just not rational. They can't be written as fractions. So irrational numbers like our fractions, decimals, repeating decimals, integers, whole numbers, and then we have our irrational numbers, things like this, numbers that go on forever and ever. Can't write that as a fraction. Pi, which is 3.1415, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember the rest. And numbers like this, they go on forever and ever. And we will talk more about these crazy looking numbers, the square root of 10 and square root of 2. We'll talk more. And that is all. Peace.